Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new Sim Racing Online series on Assetto Corsa. First and foremost, please do let me know if you can hear me properly. I've done my best to set this up, but it's been a little bit tricky, and there have been some issues, so if the cars are too loud or anything like that, then please do let me know, so I can sort it out now rather than during the race itself. I've also had to increase my microphone gain a little bit, so I'm hoping it's not topping out too much, but we will deal with that when we come to it. So this is of course a brand new series, but only kind of, because they have already had one round. We were unfortunately unable to stream the first race of the championship, which was held at the classic Reims circuit in France, but we are here today. This is round 2 from Bannochbrae in Scotland. It is a fictional Scottish Highland track held on a fictional street complex. It's actually a figure of 8 circuit. It's a very interesting lineup. We're actually going to go over the bridge now, which the circuit goes under and over, of course. That's how bridges and tunnels work. We're currently watching Christian Dauger, who is on an outlap, and he's a little way from the start line because this is in fact a very long circuit. Now I am paranoid, so I'm actually just going to listen back to myself quickly on stream just to hear if you can hear me properly. I did test this out before the start. The trouble was I wasn't able to do a test. Of course, that's how bridges... there we go. Sorry, I know you just heard me twice. That was me testing if you could hear me or not. Yeah, I wasn't able to do a test stream before this, or a test recording, because my computer is ridiculously low on space. Anyway, you can see that this is a very long circuit. Christian Dauger just starting a lap now, so we're going to be able to see what the circuit has in store for us today. It's about 4.52 miles long, so that's just over 7 kilometers in length. Specifically, it is 7.282 kilometers in length, so that's longer even than Spa-Francorchamps, the longest circuit on the Formula 1 calendar, showing you just what a track it is and what a difficult beast it is to learn. That is important because these are not the easiest cars at the best of times. These are of course 1960s GT races. There's a choice of a whole bunch of different beautiful cars that they can choose from, which we will be seeing all of in due time, all of the cars that have been selected. This is the Shelby Cobra, or the AC Shelby Cobra 289 hardtop. They actually have a choice of Shelby. If you're going for the Shelby, you can go for the 289 Cobra hardtop, or the 2899 Cobra Competition, which doesn't have the roof to it. This one a little bit more streamlined, but also slightly heavier as well. But both of the two Shelbys have exactly the same engine and chassis and everything along those lines, so there isn't much of a difference between the two. I think we've seen enough of the track from Christian Dauger. He's just coming towards the end of this particular lap, so let's have a little look through the field. This is Kirill Kirilov. He has a Ferrari 275, I believe. Let me get my my notes up. I should probably have those up. Yes, 275 GTB, the 3.3 litre V12 engine. This car came out in 1965. All of the cars that you're going to be seeing today are from the mid to late 1960s. Some of them from the slightly earlier 1960s. They all have around 300 to 400 horsepower. This one in particular has 320 brake horsepower, weighing 980 kilograms, so a power to weight ratio of about 2.9 kilograms to the brake horsepower. Kirill Kirilov, one of two drivers who has chosen to take the Ferrari, and crucially he actually switched over from the Chevrolet Corvette that he was racing at the last round, meaning that any points he might have gained at the last round he has unfortunately had to forfeit. That is the forfeit that you take if you switch cars in this series. Let's take a look at some of the other drivers out there. This is Julian Paus in the Bizzarini the Bizzarrini Bizzarrini GT 5300 Corsa, a 5.4 litre V8 engine, so fewer cylinders than the Ferrari, but a larger engine overall. It's from 1965. It's the heaviest car in the field at just over a ton, but it is also the one with the theoretical highest top speed. So there's a real trade-off with the Bizzarrini, and I'm afraid this track probably won't suit it that much. It's significantly twistier than the Rennes circuit was 2 weeks ago. But Julian Paus doing a good job nonetheless. He was one of the fastest drivers in the practice session that took place just now. In terms of the championship standings, Maddie Shepherd took the win at Rennes 2 weeks ago in her Chevrolet Corvette. She is out there again today. Laurent Lons was second in his Corvette. The Corvette was extremely competitive last time out. Mattias Estrella was third in the Bizzarrini that you're watching now. Here is Maddie Shepherd, the championship leader in her Corvette, so let's ride on board with her as she shows us the final sector of this Bannochbrae circuit. And of course Maddie is in fact Scottish, so this is her home circuit in terms of this particular championship. Over the bridge she goes, and you can see that this is a street circuit in every sense of the road, in every sense of the word. A road circuit, more accurately, I suppose. They've got a creek on the left, separated from the cars by just a tiny little chain link fence. That's not going to be keeping the cars out by any stretch of the imagination. Shepherd across the line, only third for the time being. She'll be hoping for better than that, but she was saying to me just now she's not sure if this car is really going to suit this particular track. Stefan Lagodin here has another Shelby hardtop. Stefan was 11th at the last round in Rennes, so not the best start to the championship for Stefan, but that is okay. Still plenty of time to go, and Lagodin is 6th of the 9 drivers who have set times so far in this session. Kirill Kirilov currently top of the times. Scrolling back, we have Laurent Lons here in a GTC Corvette. That is the car that he was second place at Rennes with, and Lons in the very distinctive bright yellow Corvette. Now there was one driver who's having to carry a penalty into today. I don't think that was Laurent Lons, but I'm just going to check the forum very quickly, just to make sure that that I have that information under my belt for the start of the race, because that of course is very important to know for the qualifying order. Looks like, well, I thought it was going to be in one particular... Oh, I'm looking in the wrong place. That'll be why I can't find it. Okay, so it is Kirill Kirilov who has a drive-through penalty. That's for punting in the first round. So even if he is to start on pole position, he will get to start there. He won't necessarily be able to stay there for the length of the race, because of course he will have to take a drive-through penalty not too long after the start of the race. If you are watching on YouTube, we do have a live chat as well, so please do keep in touch with us. The official Sim Racing Online channel says voice volume is good. That is good to know. Thank you very much for keeping me updated. Automata says let's go Julian. That would be Julian Paus, who is currently in 3rd position. So we already have someone cheering on their favourite driver, and that is good to see, as 14 drivers have now set laps. Let's take a look and find some of the other cars. There's Paul Upham. He has a Ferrari. We've seen the Ferrari already, and Julian Paus has gone up to 2nd position there. Here's Phil Brown, one of the drivers who's actually switched cars after the first race. Brown has changed from the Porsche 904-6 to the Shelby Cobra 289 hardtop. I'm not sure if there are any Porsche 904-6s remaining in the field. Philip Pickler should have a Porsche, and here he is, and he does still have the Porsche 904-6. There were a few drivers who had this car in the first round, but clearly they weren't very popular, and the drivers switched away from them, and Phil Brown, for example, has had to give up several points, give up 14 points, I think, in the championship as a result of switching these cars, which I guess shows you how desperate he was to change away from this Porsche. Whoa, four wheels up in the air there for Philip Pickler. That was spectacular on this fantastically entertaining Bannochbrae circuit in Scotland. So this is the Porsche 9046. It is the lightest car in the field. It's also theoretically the least powerful with the smallest engine, and as a result, the power to weight ratio that you might expect it to have, it doesn't really have. At least compared to its opponents. I'm not sure that the Porsche is a great car for this league, but if there is one track where it's going to go relatively well, it should be here in Bannochbrae, because of course it's a relatively twisty circuit where these light cars with optimal handling could be a realistic strategy, but we'll have to wait and see what Philip Pickler is able to do in that car. Here's another car you might see out and about. This is the Alfa Romeo 33 Corsa Stradale. This car has 254 brake horsepower, so it's not hugely powerful compared to the Ferraris, the Bizzarinis, or the Chevrolets. But it is a rather light car, much lighter than you might expect, at just 700 kilograms. And this car, I'm sure, will be handling like a fly around this circuit, as it's driven by John van der Geest, Kimi Martikainen and Tony Talviti. Talviti being one of those drivers who has switched his allegiance. Oh, he's gone to the top of the times, look. So Talviti with a 238.528 is now the driver to beat. Let's see if Kirill Kirillov or anyone else can do anything about it. Well, Julian Paus there goes third place with a 239.0. Almost exactly the same time as Kirill Kirillov, just missing out on second by 400ths of a second. Let me update you on the full order from last time. So, as I said, Maddie Shepherd won it in the Corvette. The Corvette was clearly the car to have at Rem, with its long straights, and of course the Corvette's massive amount of power. So, Maddie Shepherd was the first driver home and led every single lap of the race. It's what we refer to as a Grand Chelem, where you lead every lap, take the fastest lap, pole position and race win. Laurent Lons was second, Matthias Estrella third, Kai Sivertsen fourth in the Jaguar E-Type. Let's see if Sivertsen still has that Jaguar E-Type. That looks like an E-Type to me, so we will be seeing the E-Types out and about. Julian Paus was in fifth position in the Bizzarini. Then it was Kirill Kirillov, Michal Mazurek, Tony Talviti, Mariusz Labioda, and Phil Brown, who of course has changed cars since as Paus gets very close to the wall, might have even touched the barriers there. And the checkered flag is out now and waiting for the drivers to cross the line. Estrella goes fourth. Back to the race last time out. Stefan Lagodin was 11th, Philip Pickler was 12th, Paul Upham 13th, John van der Geest 14th, and Kimi Martikainen was 15th position. So that was how they rounded out the field last time out. John van der Geest, meanwhile, goes up into 7th position. Now, is Kirill Kirillov still on the lap? He could be one of the only drivers still available to take that pole position away from Tony Talviti. Tony getting on very well with his new car and putting in a time half a second faster than anyone else. Kirillov a quarter of a second down in that sector. I'm not sure that anyone is going to be able to beat Tony Talviti in this session, and that means he will probably start from the very front of the grid. We're going to have a standing start today. It was a rolling start at Rem last time out, but I am informed by John van der Geest that we have a standing start for this particular race. And that means, of course, that Talviti does not have the advantage of the single file start that he had last time out, or that Shepherd had last time out, leading from the front of the grid. Shepherd, by the way, can only do 5th position at best, because she is in the pits now, has completed her flying lap, and can do no more. So the championship leader will be 5th position at best. Phil Brown crosses the line. He is in 8th position and will do no better. The checkered flag awaits Kirill Kirillov as he comes up to the line. There's a car pulling into the pits just ahead, and Kirillov improves but stays in 2nd position. Only 2 cars under the 2:39 minute the 2-minute 39 bracket, and I think that could be it for that session. Paul Upham is coming towards the end of the lap in his Ferrari. There's that little sector where you take flight, all four wheels off the ground as you head towards the bridge over the river, past the sign for Glen Balloch. Not sure if that's a real place or not. Sounds pretty convincing. Sounds like a Scottish name. Stefan Lagodin goes 10th, and that's a spin for Paul Upham, and that will be his lap done and dusted. So I believe we probably have the finished order for this particular session. Let's look at the beautiful green Alfa Romeo Corsa 33 Stradale, driven by John van der Geest, one of the staff members of Sim Racing Online, who provides us with these wonderful races. And I'd like to say thank you actually to John van der Geest and everyone else who helped me to set up this broadcast. As I'm sure you know, I've been having a lot of problems with this one and was not able to get live last time out. So I'd especially like to say thank you to Rob Milliken, Nigel Middleton, John van der Geest and Kimi Martikainen, and of course anyone else who gave me advice that helped me to set this stream up. I have to admit, I'm not the most technically knowledgeable of all people, and as a result, when I have to download complex things and set up complex streaming software, things can go wrong. But I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad it's now rather than later, because if the field shrinks and we get below 10 entries, there's no guarantee that we will be broadcasting this whole season. So it's important that we get these broadcasts out now to keep the interest in the league, to keep people coming in, and to keep these races afloat until the very end of this 6-race championship. Roman Labro says GG Julian Powers. So we have a couple of different Julian Powers fans in this chat. Julian doing a good job to qualify 3rd position in that session, and that will be where he starts this race. I'm just going to go back to my chat and see if for sure we are starting as a standing start. We are indeed, and that is a change from last time out. Okay. Some quick notes from John van der Geest that he sent me. There is a balance of performance patch that's made by the tracks and the weight of all the cars on those tracks throughout the series. Fuel use is 50%. The fuel tanks of the muscle cars are not big enough for 60 minutes, which is what this race is. The BOP for the heavy cars would be lost on the twisty tracks. Damage is also 50%, because otherwise no one would get to the finish. The only other note that he's given me is that Kirill Kirillov has to do a drive-through penalty, and we will wait to see what comes of that, because of course he is starting from 2nd position in this race, and so will definitely drop back. Looks like the official Sim Racing Online chat says Tony, go, go, go. So whoever's in charge of that is a Tony Talviti fan. Fueled by whiskey, don't drive and drink, kids. Hopefully he's nice and safe to be racing today. But anyway, how long do we have till the race starts? Feels like we've been sitting here for a while. There you see the grid order once again. 15 drivers in total set laps. Mariusz Lebioda also on the server, but not setting a starting time. And ignore Caitlin Penny, that is me, your commentator for the day. So I've had to load a car in for the broadcast. Did we see all of the cars in qualifying? We didn't get a good look at the Jaguar E-Type, did we? So I'll have to take a look at that during the race. I believe we took a good look at all of these other cars. And to be honest, it's surprising to me that there aren't many Corvettes in this race, because there were quite a few in the last one, and they seem to be very competitive, taking a 1-2 with Shepard and Lons. But it does appear that they're nowhere near as competitive for this race. You can see that Shepard in particular is over 1.7 seconds back from the leader, and it's the lighter cars such as the Alfa Romeo 33 that have taken the advantage here. But then again, the Bizzarini is the heaviest car in the field, so I guess I will eat my words on that. So we're still waiting for the start of the race. This is much longer than I expected. Roman Labro says, what's the setting of the track? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that, but this is the Bannochbrae circuit in Scotland. It's a fictional circuit, so you won't find it in reality, unfortunately. But it is beautiful, and it's very much the same kind of setting that you would see in a classic Grand Prix or GT circuit from the 1960s. Where they've effectively just cordoned off a public road. There was a real lack of purpose-built race circuits back in the day, and they didn't really need purpose-built racetracks because safety wasn't really a consideration, so they were perfectly happy to race on road courses like this, even though they could very easily fly over a bridge and end up in a creek, or in someone's house, someone's back garden. Let's run you through the qualifying order again quickly while we're waiting. Whatever we are waiting for. Tony Talviti takes pole position, followed by Kirill Kirilov, who will start in second, but will have to take a drive-through penalty. Then it's Julian Paus, Matthias Estrella, Maddie Shepherd, the winner of the last race, disappointed to be fifth. Then it's Paul Upham, John Van der Geest, Phil Brown, Laurent Lons, Stefan Lagodin, and then Michal Mazurek, Kai Sivertsen, Philip Pickler, Kimi Martikainen, and Christian Dauger. We will also potentially have Mariusz Lebioda starting the race, despite the fact he did not set a lap in qualifying, and then that will be the lot. Now I'm going to have to load into the grid just so I can remove the car once the race starts. It's an unfortunate feature of Assetto Corsa, so I will try my best to get back and take a look at the order and at the race as quickly as I possibly can. Assetto Corsa, not the best setup sim for broadcasting, but here come the lights anyway. When those 6 red lights on my screen go off, then the race will start, which it does right now. So let's go very quickly to the front of the grid. Tony Talviti will lead us away, and that looks like a slow start to me. It looks as if they're going into single file, so ignore me. The race has not yet begun. They are going for a rolling start. So the information that I was given by John Van der Geest is not entirely accurate, I'm afraid to say. And as a result of that, I'm afraid I don't know exactly where the start of the race will be. But Tony Talviti controls the pace until they get to the agreed upon starting line, and I think they have crossed it because Shepherd appears to be going for a move for 4th place. So away they go. The race is now officially on. Talviti leads from Kirilov and Paus, and then Estrella, and Maddie Shepherd taking a look all over the back of Matthias Estrella for that 4th position. Lagodin and Brown swapping places for 9th position further back. There is that bright yellow Ferrari as Shepherd comes through in the Corvette. This is for 4th position in the race in the early stages, and it looks as if she's made it stick. So through the beautiful Scottish wilderness go the field of 16 GT cars, and it is indeed 16 cars because Mariusz Lebioda has joined the field in his Chevrolet Corvette right at the back. Looks like Paus has got Kirilov, so Paus is up into 2nd position now. John Van der Geest up into 6th ahead of Paul Upham, and we'll watch Kirill Kirilov, I think, towards the end of this lap to see if he makes his drive-through penalty right from the start, or if we will have to wait until later on to see him do that drive-through penalty. Of course, he will have to serve it soon, and I wouldn't be surprised if he serves it on the very first lap, because that would get him out of the traffic, and then he'll be able to get on with his race from then, get it out of the way, and then get on with the race. Now, we're not expecting pit stops in this race, at least not from the leaders. There were a couple of pit stops in the last race, but it was only because of damage that may have occurred, and luckily it appears that everyone has got through the first lap okay, at least for the time being. Tony Talviti now leads this race by 1.7 seconds, so he's getting away. Kirilov dipping wheels into the grass, but keeping the car on the road and pointing in the right direction. He's on the straight and narrow, as they say. Bit of a lock-up further back. Looks like Brown has got back past Lagodin. These two have been swapping places all the way through that first lap of the race Automata in the YouTube chat says, yes, let's go Julian, get him. Julian Paus indeed up into second position as the Cobra hardtops still continue to fight over 9th and 10th positions and fly over the jump. Towards the second lap of the race they go now. And I have to admit, I don't know this track well enough to tell you if they have passed the start-finish line or not just yet. But here's a move. Maddie Shepherd going past Kirill Kirilov and does get through as they get up to the start-finish line. And Kirilov brakes because he's coming into the pits for a drive-through penalty. So into the pits comes the Ferrari 275 GTB of Kirill Kirilov. He loses places. Estrella goes through, Van der Geest goes through, Upham goes through, and he comes out in 11th position. Drops all the way back to 11th position, but still they built enough of a margin that he got out ahead of the slow-starting Mariusz Lebioda, who had to come from the very back of the field, ahead of Kimi Martikainen, Philip Pichler, Christian Dauger, and Kai Sivertsen in the only Jaguar E-Type lightweight on the grid. And I think there may have been a collision or something, because a few of these drivers further back have dropped a long way down, especially compared to where they were last time I saw them. So hopefully everything's okay there and there is not too much damage. Let's look back up to the front of the field. Here is the immensely popular Julian Paus, as I'm finding out from the YouTube chat. I've seen 2 people already cheering for Julian Paus, and only 1 person cheering for anyone else, who was Tony Talviti, of course. These 2 first and second in the race, so this will be a very popular race for the YouTube chat as it stands. Let's ride on board with Julian Paus in his immensely powerful Bizzarini 5300. This car was the first ever car branded as a Bizzarini when it came out in 1965. The Bizzarini brand didn't previously exist, and it was founded by Bizzarini himself. I'm going to look up, I'm saying this from memory so far, but I will have to look up what his first name actually was in order to give him proper recognition. Giotto Bizzarini, that is it. And it only ran from 1964 to 1969. Not a very long-lived company, but it looks as if they're actually planning to restart production. It was bought in 2020 by a brand called Pegasus, together with plans to restart production. So keep your eyes peeled, I suppose. There may well be some more Bizzarinis in the works. Very interesting indeed. But yes, this Bizzarini, a beautiful car. Oh, and that was a mistake from Julian Paus, I think. I looked down at just the wrong moment there, but I saw something happen at the corner of my eye. I've also seen that Paul Upham and John Van der Geest have continued to fight. They swapped positions a couple of times. Sometimes when you see what looks like a driver swapping positions with another, it's not actually a change for position. It's just because they've got alongside and they've got their noses just ahead of the opposition. I've just looked back at what happened to Julian Paus actually, and you would have seen it was quite a significant bounce off the barriers. He's lucky that the damage for this race is capped at 50%, and so is Mariusz Lebioda, who has had an off of his own, and will drop back into 15th position now behind Christian Dauger. The steering still seems relatively straight, but he's in danger of dropping right to the back of the grid as through comes Kai Sivertsen in his lightweight Jaguar E-Type. Through he goes on the inside. Oh, and he makes a mistake of his own and also has his own bounce off the barriers. Unfortunate stuff, but there you go. Let's take a look at another Bizzarini, Matheus Estrella, chasing Maddie Shepherd. The 2 of them still dropping back from the top 2, actually. Looks like Talviti and Paus are in a bit of a race of their own for the time being. And since they're a little spread out, I'm actually going to take a look at Kirill Kirilov here, the driver who had a drive-through penalty at the start of this race, and so will have the red mist in front of his eyes as he aims to catch back up to the cars he feels he should be racing. His next target are the 2 battling Cobra hardtops of Stefan Lagodin and Phil Brown in 8th and 9th positions. These cars still race in reality, of course, the 1960s GT cars. They're often some of the best races at Goodwood members meetings and Goodwood revival meetings, often known as the Kinrara Trophy. I think they've been renamed to something like the Sterling Moss Trophy, or definitely been renamed in honour of some kind of classic racing driver over the years, but sometimes they even do races that go into the night, hour-long races like this, where they switch drivers partway through, and there is a move from Kirill Kirillov. Brown not putting up too much of a fight. It almost looked as if he backed off the throttle there and let the charging Ferrari go through and take the place. I think when Phil Brown announced that he was changing cars, he said that his main motivation was just to get a Ferrari on the grid. There is, of course, a couple of Ferraris on the grid now. And goodness me, a third Paus fan has joined into the chat. Someone by the name of Gamos, or Gamos. Welcome in. Julian Paus really is an incredibly popular driver by the look of it. That's good to know. So Kirillov up into 9th position on that lap. He's got another Cobra hardtop in front of him. And in those classic GT races that still take place sometimes at Goodwood revival meetings and classic car meetings around the world, it's often the Cobra hardtops that are best represented along with potentially Ford GT40s, simply because so many of them were made in period. Ferraris, of course, still well presented as well, such as the 250, but the drivers of those cars tend to be a little more cautious considering just how immensely valuable they are, including the 250 GTO, which these drivers here could have selected, but it's obviously slightly more outdated than the 275 GTB, so I'm not surprised that we don't have any 250 GTOs out there. But I believe for a while that was the most expensive car ever sold, when a classic car was sold for several hundred million pounds, I think. Kirillov going for a move now, has his nose to the inside of Lagodin. Lagodin holds him off. It's difficult to find a way to pass cleanly at Bannochbrae, because the track is just so fast, while also being so tight and so dangerous with no margin for error. Through on the inside goes Kirillov. Does he make the corner? He does indeed. So Kirillov in the bright yellow Ferrari is up into 8th position. And this chicane here, I think, just shows what I mean about how there's no margin for error. You can absolutely imagine something going very wrong indeed through there. And I hope that nothing does over the course of the day. It reminds me of the Master Kink at Spa-Francorchamps, where if you have an accident, it's always going to be a big one, and back in the day was very often fatal. Matheus Estrella has been catching up to Maddie Shepherd. I was saying before how these two are dropping back from the leaders. That has continued to be the case, but they have stuck together, and I think Estrella just had a little touch of the chain link fence. Oh, that's a big touch, and he's going across the track. He's losing it, and a big smash into the wall for Matheus Estrella, and that will release Maddie Shepherd to get away in 3rd position. Let's see what Estrella does. Can he rejoin the race safely? Will he rejoin the race? Or is he going to have to pit for damage? He's still just sitting there. I'm not sure if he's... Well, he's going to spin turn the car. Let's hope it's safe. He's got a little bit of time before Kimi Martikainen comes through, and it looks as if he is safe to continue. And the steering looks straight, but I can't imagine the car will be very happy with him after a shunt like that. That does mean that championship leader Maddie Shepherd is now well and truly by herself in that 3rd position. Alright guys, you've cheered for Julian Paus enough. Let's keep an eye on Julian. He's now within 1.5 seconds of Tony Talviti for the first time since the 2nd lap of the race. Quite long laps here, about 2 minutes 40. And that was only in qualifying, so they're probably doing 2 minutes 45 or so now. And he's now within a second, or at least he was through that last mini split. Julian Paus could have a real chance of challenging Tony Talviti before too long. Pariodis X says, I reckon Kirillov will be at least on the podium at the end of the race. Well, he's up into 6th place now. He's just past Laurent Lons. So Kirilov up into 6th position. While we were watching Julian Paus, and it looks as if Estrella's had another incident and is parked across the track, and there's another crash, and that is Philip Pichler. So Pichler, in the only remaining Porsche 904-6, looks as if he lost it in avoidance of Estrella, and Estrella having 2 accidents in the space of a lap shows me that maybe he has more damage than it previously seemed. Unlucky for Philip Pichler, he was very much the innocent bystander in that one. Okay then. Kirilov has got away from Laurent Lons, so it looks as if his 6th place is relatively safe for the time being. Lons comes through, then Lagodin, then Brown. Those 4 cars still pretty close. The rest of the field's spreading out a little bit due to various incidents, and the fact that this track is so difficult, it does tend to kind of act a bit like a sieve, shaking the cars apart and separating, I would say, the men from the boys, but that's a little bit overly harsh on those who may be a little further back. I have to admit, I'm not sure I would do well in this race. This track requires so much concentration. Across the line they go once again. Whenever you see a driver set a purple time, as you see on the left-hand side, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the fastest lap overall, but it does mean that they have their personal best laps of the race. Matheus Estrella back up past Kai Sivertsen, so he's still pushing, he's still going in this race. How much longer will that last? As Kirilov briefly got back within a second of John van der Geest, I think we could have a battle on our hands for 5th position before too long. So I shall continue to watch this one. And I'm glad, with the amount of damage that we've seen sustained by some cars in this race, I'm glad that this isn't real. This would be extremely expensive if it was. These cars, of course, have so much mystique around them, so much nostalgia, that they really do tend to sell for millions of pounds, even the lesser known ones. And as a result, it's amazing that some of them are still out there racing in classic car events like the Kinrara Trophy. We know that Kirilov is quick, and we know that he is competitive. He's a long-time competitor with Sim Racing Online. He's got several track records to his name. He has, I think, even a few Sim Racing Online championships to his name. He does indeed. The last one of those was in December 2023, so just over a year ago, when he won the USF 2000 Awesome Club Track Series. And he first won a championship with Sim Racing Online way back in 2020. So he's been with us for a while, still pushing on, still going strong, and we love that kind of commitment. The race leader, by the way, Tony Talviti, first won a championship with Sim Racing Online in 2018. Most recently won it only in November when he won the Ariel Atom V8 Best Fantasy Track Series. That was a championship I was hoping to take part in, actually, but unfortunately other things came up. Six laps completed now. We're over a quarter of the way into this 1 hour long race, and it's still Tony Talviti leading from Paul Upham by just under 2 seconds, now just over 2 seconds, although don't panic, the gap keeps fluctuating by the look of it. Paul Upham is third, only just ahead. Oh, ahead of Maddie Shepherd. Now I did not see that happen. That wouldn't have happened too long ago. But I'm sure last time I saw Maddie Shepherd, she was running in third position, and she'd just shaken off Matheus Estrella, who had that accident. So perhaps there was a mistake for Maddie Shepherd as well. And I am sorry that we didn't see that, but it wouldn't have been that long ago by the look of it. John van der Geest is fifth, just ahead of Kirilov, who will surely challenge him before too long. Laurent Lunds is 7th, Stefan Lagodin is 8th, and then it's Phil Brown and Michal Mazurek. Shepard got very close to the back of Paul Upham there. Whatever happened, she's angry about it. Probably angry with herself. She was in the middle of nowhere, not racing with anyone. She gets her nose up alongside Paul Upham's Ferrari. The much wider Corvette, the most powerful car in the field. Backs out of it, at least for the time being. Little twitch, but she's okay. If you were wondering how powerful the Corvette actually is, it's reported to have 390 brake horsepower, which, okay, that's nothing compared to modern Chevrolet Corvettes, but considering this car is from 1967, that is quite something. And compared to the other cars in the field, it has not just the best power and not just the largest engine, a 7-litre V8 if you were wondering, but it also has the best power to weight ratio, at least according to Content Manager, which is a plug-in, a downloadable app associated with Assetto Corsa. Looks like Julian Paus has now dropped to 3 seconds behind Tony Talviti, so not a great last lap there from Julian Paus. But we'll give him time to see how that develops. Only 4/10 slower than Talviti, so I guess some of that must have been on the previous lap too. Kirillov, meanwhile, is up into 5th position. He has taken Paul Upham. Sorry, John van der Geest. I'm still busy trying to find where Shepard got passed by Upham. Shepard was 3 seconds ahead of Upham before whatever happened to her happened, and then her name went red, which usually means they've had an incident. Meanwhile, Estrella has just repassed Lebioda up into 12th place. Here's Shepard, glued to the back of Paul Upham, trying to gain even more points in her championship challenge. It's way too early still to be talking about the championship in terms of the fight for the overall title, but it's only a 6-race championship, so everything you gain now will certainly carry through to the end of the season. Kai Sivertsen, meanwhile, just got 13th place back from Mariusz Lebioda. Shepard really struggling to find a way past Paul Upham here. I think the Ferrari's getting better drive off the corners by the look of it. And even though the Corvette may technically have an inferior or a superior top speed, there's not really any way you can reach that top speed around this track. And I'm not sure they even get much closer. Stefan Lagodin has just passed Laurent Lunds, that is for 7th position. It's a bit of a shame that we're only updated of moves after they've happened, because obviously it means that by the time I've switched to the battle, it's already happened, and apparently Lunds has just launched it back to the inside of Lagodin, and is... well, they're going to go through this tight chicane side by side, but Laurent Lunds does go back into 7th position ahead of Stefan Lagodin. Okay then, it's going to be another one of those races where you don't necessarily know where to look. Well, I know where to look now. Shepard is to the right of Paul Upham. It's Corvette versus Ferrari. The Corvette should have the power down this straight, and Shepard goes through. So Maddie Shepard is through into 3rd position now, as she was before. Sliding it out. Tony Talviti sets the fastest lap of the race, 2:38.5. That's about what he was doing in qualifying, showing that there's really not that much difference, if any, between race pace and qualifying pace. And Shepard will complete the lap in 3rd position. Wow, quick lap from Kirillov as well. Takes 2 seconds out of Paul Upham. That's a fight that I imagine will kick off before too long as well. Good to see so many of you active in the YouTube chat today. I hope you're all enjoying this as much as I am. This has been a very absorbing race so far, where you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. There's been mistakes, but there's also been some pretty good, clean racing. And so far I haven't seen the likes of Tony Talviti or Paus put a wheel wrong. Julian Paus put a wheel wrong. Or even Paul Upham, to be honest. He just hasn't quite been as quick as Matty Shepherd. And that's the recipe for a good race, you know. You don't want to see races decided by people sliding off the road. You want to see it decided by pure racing out on track. Oh, a little bit of a touch of the wall there from Paul Upham, right as I was saying I hadn't seen him make any mistakes yet. But there you go. You can get away with touches of the wall like that. It was a relatively side-on impact. Assetto Corsa doesn't tend to register heavy damage from small hits like that anyway. It's a feature of this sim that the cars tend to be a little bit tanky. Oh, very wide there from Upham. You saw the tyres smoking as he approached the corner. And that will cost him a good half a second to Shepherd as Kirilov continues to gain. You can visibly see how much closer that yellow Ferrari is to the blue Ferrari up ahead. And again in the grass goes Upham. I think he's under pressure now. Kirilov also flicking up the grass in Upham's defence. And I think there's going to be a fight emerging here. And I think that if Kirilov continues to push at this speed, then he may well be able to make the move as early as next lap, next time around. Talviti with another quick lap puts 1.3 seconds over Paus on that lap. Talviti easily the fastest driver on track as it stands. Paus was keeping up with him well at the start, but Talviti has just been so consistent these last few laps. Matty Shepherd, though, with her personal best lap of the race, takes 2 seconds away from Paul Upham. She's a long way back from the top two after whatever happened before. And I think the best she can hope for is third without any major errors from the cars ahead. But that does, of course, mean that she should be safe in third from the likes of Paul Upham, provided she doesn't make any more mistakes. Around a long right-hander goes Paul Upham. Just a sheer rock wall on the left. You don't see that nowadays, and for good reason too. I know you sometimes hear people harping on about how racing was better in the good old days, and it's too predictable nowadays, but I tell you what, at least we don't have drivers racing alongside brick walls and sheer drops anymore. I would say that modern racing is an improvement just for that. As we see Dauger and Pichler fighting over 15th position. I'm going to go back up to Kirilov, who continues to catch Upham. The only reason I showed you Pichler and Dauger there is because I saw they'd swapped positions. Kirilov in the yellow Ferrari. There's only 2 Ferraris in this race, and they're both right together. This was in the era where Ferrari was starting to be beaten in sports car racing by the likes of Ford and by the likes of Shelby. They were a real powerhouse towards the end of the 1950s and the start of the 1960s, and then famously, of course, Ford came up with the GT40 and began to take away those major wins. And Ferrari's sports car program never really recovered from that. At least not until the modern day, with the Le Mans hypercars, where of course the lineup of Alessandro Pierguidi, Antonio Giovinazzi, and I'm trying to remember who the third driver was, won the 2023 Le Mans, and that's a big slide, huge slide from Phil Bratt. Oh, and into the wall, and it's Upham, sorry. Oh, and both Ferraris are involved. Oh no! It looked as if Kirilov was just going to sneak through, and great avoidance there from John van der Geest, who does sneak through. But I'm afraid to say that was all started by Paul Upham getting sideways and losing control of his car over the bridge. And it was as he snapped, he hit the wall and came back into the path of Kirilov. Well, Kirilov has now made the move on Upham, but John van der Geest is now up into 4th position, so he's got to make that move all over again. I'm just checking to see if there's any steering damage. Doesn't look like it. These guys have got away very, very lightly, and Kai Sivertsen has just had an off in the Jaguar. As I said before, you can tell when a driver's had an off because their name goes red, at least briefly, on the left-hand side of the screen. You don't have to worry about the red lap times, that just means they didn't set their personal best. But if their name goes red, then something has happened, something rather dramatic. And Sivertsen is going to re-pass Christian Dauger now for 15th position. Keeps it out of the Armco barrier, that's important to see. Alright, back to the Ferraris. Actually, I tell you what, Lagodin is still with Laurent Lons. This race set to go all the way by the look of it. If you were wondering how points work in this race, then join the club. It's actually quite a confusing point system. Usually in Sim Racing Online Championships, it's 40 points for the win, but somehow Maddie Shepherd has 42 points, and that's because pole position and fastest lap also count for 1 point each. So if, for example, Tony Talviti was to set a Grand Chelem, which he's currently on course to do, touching wood, even though I'm not superstitious, then he would get 42 points rather than the 40 that would usually be for the race win. The thing with this point system is that there are more points available, more points paying positions available than there are cars in the race, meaning that if you compete in the race, and specifically if you complete the first lap, so you're registered as having started the race, then you are guaranteed to score points. And even as we see Lagodin now side by side with Laurent Lons, but has to concede to the Corvette's supreme power. But yeah, even if you retire from the race, for example, you will still score more points than anyone who retired on an earlier lap than you did. So it's crucially important that you keep going nonetheless, just in case something happens to somebody else. Lagodin taking another look to the outside of the Corvette. He's going to have to go all the way around the corner because Lagodin, getting my L's muddled up. Oh dear. And Lagodin nearly takes an L there as he gets it very sideways and just about avoids the barrier. That was a good save from Stefan Lagodin. Good car control, but unfortunately made the mistake that caused the tail to kick out in the first place. Lagodin carries on, but Phil Brown, his old sparring partner Phil Brown, is a bit closer to him than he was before. Some new quick laps coming in. Matheus Estrella still proving himself fast, still in the 139s despite the incidents he's had early on in the race. He'll be kicking himself for being down in 12th position. He could be as high as 3rd now if everything had gone his way. Certainly has the pace to be. The Bizzarini with the striped tail and the go faster stripes on the very front of the car. We're just over halfway through this race now. 11 laps down. Talviti leads by 6 seconds over Paus. Then Shepherd 3rd, the winner of the last race, looks set for another podium. Then John van der Geest, Kirill Kirilov, who is catching John van der Geest. Paul Upham, Laurent Lons, Stefan Lagodin, Phil Brown and Michal Mazurek. The top 10. The driver we're watching right now is of course Matheus Estrella in 12th position, as you can see on the bottom right and indeed the bottom left of your screen. Estrella's next target is Kimi Martikainen, who is clearly and visibly catching. The Bizzarini, the most powerful car in the field, albeit the heaviest. And that's a bit of a lock-up and he runs wide. Keeps it out of the barrier. We've seen some very close calls in this race so far. I'm amazed that everyone's still running, because we have seen a good few shunts. And I'm sure that some cars won't be driving quite as well as they were at the start. There's definitely damage. Through the left-hander. This is one of those circuits where it's pretty tricky to work out where you actually are. Being a road course, there's a bunch of sections that look very similar. And also being a circuit that is not particularly well known. It's not like I've ever commentated a race here before, and most, if not all, of these drivers would never have raced here before, although several of them would have done plenty of practice coming into this. And Martikainen's had an incident, and it's that same bridge which has caught out the Ferraris earlier on, and at one point caught out Matheus Estrella, who's now gone past him. Martikainen continues. The paint job certainly looks worse for wear. He might lose it again. Keeps control of it. And carries on in the Alpha 33 Corsa Stradale. Talking of Alphas, John van der Geest, who's now under pressure from Kirill Kirilov, had a little bit of unfortunate, well, a little bit of misfortune at the last race. He got taken off and into the timing tower on the pit straight. I think that might have been by Kirill Kirilov, actually, which might be why Kirilov has the drive-through penalty. But Van der Geest ended up finishing the race after a lengthy pit stop. He was a couple of laps down, and that's why he finished much further down than where he qualified and where his pace suggested that he should have been. Things like that happen in these races. Just ask Matheus Estrella. Tyres getting greasy, says Sim Racing Online. They are sliding around a bit, but then again, that's just how 1960s GT cars worked. No wings, no artificial downforce on these cars. It was just down to your mechanical grip. And of course, the tyres do wear. Assetto Corsa is not the greatest sim for calculating tyre wear, but it does calculate that, and there's a mistake! Oh, and into the wall! And it's Van der Geest, and Kirilov takes evasive action and does avoid the spinning Alfa Romeo. John Van der Geest carries on. And once again, the steering looks fine. This is crazy stuff. The rear window looks a bit shattered. But Van der Geest rejoins in 5th position. And that means that Kirilov does not have to pass him on the road. I'm sure he'll be thankful for that. Tony Talviti, meanwhile, set a very competitive lap time that last time around, 2:38.2. That's 3/10 faster than he was even going in qualifying. An unbelievable lap time from Tony Talviti as the fuel gets lower and lower. And that was what I was going to say about the tyres just before. These cars, well, they do calculate tyre wear, they do simulate that. It's not as much as you would get on a modern slick tyre, and sometimes back in the day these drivers would actually use the same set of tyres multiple races in a row because they were so reliable. They were basically just road-going tyres that you could go out and buy and put on your regular road car, and so they were designed to be durable. I think Van der Geest will probably drop back from Kirilov now. He's kept up with him surprisingly well, considering how brutally he bounced off the wall. But Kirilov has had the pace so far. Kimi Martikainen is in the pits now. We saw him having a nasty bounce off the wall on the last lap, so I wonder if that is damage repair, unfortunately. He's the first car that we've seen in the pits, with the exception of Kirill Kirilov, who took a drive-through. I believe we're getting towards the end of this particular lap. I'm trying to work out exactly how the laps actually work. So the next bit should be a left-hander, followed by a kind of left-right chicane. I believe this is the bit that goes over the bridge, maybe? Yeah, this is that lovely... Yeah, I'm definitely definitely getting the hang of where we are now. I'd recommend getting up a track map if you haven't seen it already. We're just heading into the 3rd sector. And it's just 2 relatively long right-handers, 2 medium-speed right-handers, I guess, to go. That's where that brutal jump is. Vandegeest still keeping up with Kirilov. Keeps it quite tight, away from the gate on the outside. That's presumably just someone's house out there. I'd love to have a house near a race circuit. Who is it? There's one of the Australian drivers or something who lives on the Conrod Strait at Bathurst. Sounds like an amazing place to live. I mean, sure, you can't exactly have a midday nap, at least not with the cars shooting past your house and roaring as they do down the Conrod, but, you know, get to watch free racing from your own garden. Why not? You get a similar thing at Imola, too. Not to mention Monaco. John Vandegeest really is keeping up with Kirilov. It almost looks as if Kirilov's backed off the pace, because before the move was made, Kirilov was easily faster than John Vandegeest. Sim Racing Online channel once again bringing up Tony's whiskey flask. Once again, I really do hope that he is not actually racing under the influence of whiskey, because that would not be the first time that a Sim Racing Online driver has been driving while tipsy, and I think it's a little selfish, to be honest. If you cause an accident, I'd certainly be annoyed at that. But Tony is certainly not driving like he's under the influence right now. Driving like a very capable and competitive man. We've barely even seen him. We'll have to take a look at Tony before too long just to check if he's still there. Oh, and something's happened to Paus. I'm seeing the red. Wow, the red name of doom comes up on Julian Paus, and he drops to 12 seconds back as Ligonin passes Lons. But yeah, something just happened to Julian Paus. I'm afraid we do not have replays. The bonnet's folded up. You can see the bonnet slightly higher than it was. Something's happened to Lebioda now as he faces backwards. Here comes Philip Pickler. Oh, cool. Huge impact there. And that was absolutely the fault of Mariusz Lebioda, rejoining unsafely. Don't do it again. He's going back across the track, nearly into the path of the Alfa Romeo. And Lebioda is our first retirement from the race. And goodness me, Philip Pickler got the worst of that. As for Julian Paus, you can see the damage on the car. We'll have to wait and see whether or not it affects him. There it is, that folded up bonnet. Pario Deus X says, Power seems to have used his tyres more and is now dropping back. Well, yeah, definitely he is now. I presume that comment came in before his accident. Tony's really looking good after looking after his tyres on GT cars. It's usually how he beats the Black Cats in GT cars on R-Factor 2. Yeah. I can say from personal experience that Tony is a very hard person to beat, simply because he doesn't seem to make mistakes. That's always been my biggest issue in racing, that sometimes I'll have the pace and I'll have the concentration for most of the race, and then, I don't know, it'll just go away or something, it'll just lapse and I'll make a mistake. But Tony's Helveti just does not do that. Carnage, says Sim Racing Online. Yes, indeed. 3 cars are apparently a lap down now. Kai Sivitsen, Philip Pickler and Christian Dauger. And you can see them up the road, actually, from Julian Paus. Now, this raises the interesting possibility of traffic getting involved in the race for the lead. Hopefully they see the other cars coming through. As always, blue flags are... Whoa, and he's in the wall! Please avoid him, Julian! He does! Good avoidance there. And that was Christian Dauger bouncing off the barriers. But yeah, blue flags purely advisory in Sim Racing Online. You don't have to get out of the way of the leaders, and you won't get a penalty if you don't, but you should at least be wary of them as they're coming through, because you're not going to be popular if you sit in front of the leader for no good reason for a long time, and you're going to be even less popular if you end up causing an accident. Let's take a look at this fight between Lagodin and Lons. Because of how long it's been going on, I don't see any reason that it would end soon. And it might well go to the flag. Two of the most powerful cars in the field. The AC Cobra and the Chevrolet Corvette. The AC Cobra, of course, was one of the first real successful dual nationality GT cars in the world. Designed as a collaboration between AC Cars and Carroll Shelby himself, where they put a big old Ford V8 engine in the front of a lovely little nimble lightweight British chassis, and that combination really did work to make an iconic car of the 1960s. It's the car that everyone's dad has on a mug. Oh, and I hope that I have, well, I was about to say I hope that that was on my end rather than on the server's end, because it looked as if every single car had DNF'd there for a sudden. But luckily, they're all back in action, so whatever it was has not lasted. And Mateus Estrella is back into the top 10, having passed Michal Mazurek. This is a decidedly un-Michal Mazurek-like performance, actually. He's normally better than this. Normally more competitive than this. No disrespect to him whatsoever. I'm just saying that because I've raced against him enough on R-Factor 2 to know that he is one of the quickest drivers out there. And I wouldn't have expected to see him running in 11th position. Then again, the Corvette certainly not the powerhouse that it was at Rennes 2 weeks ago. 15 cars remaining in this race. Mariusz Lebiode, the only retirement so far. 12 on the lead lap. 8 within a minute of the leader. And the Sim Racing Online channel says, I'm out, off to work in the real world. Go Tony. Well, first of all, you never confirmed who you are. Was that, it's either Nigel or, who else could it be? Anyway, have fun at work. Tony Talviti still in the 2:39's very quick lap, as is Julian Paus, so his damage not affecting him too badly. Amazingly so. I swear, if this race had been run in reality, we'd probably only have about 5 cars remaining at this point, if that. But luckily, the damage turned down a little bit, so that we can at least have a race. And we're into the final quarter, the final 15 minutes, the final 14 minutes actually, because I'm a little bit late to that party. Tony Talviti leads by 13 seconds to Julian Paus. And Shepard's had another incident. Shepard, oh, and into the wall goes Kirilov. Kirilov went through to third, but he's off the road too, presumably an avoidance. John Van der Geest goes third. So Van der Geest is third, Kirilov fourth, Shepard fifth. And still, it is absolute carnage out there. And still, by the looks of things, no steering damage. Steering damage maybe not something these cars have to contend with. But yeah, that appears to have been triggered by Shepard there, losing control somehow. And Kirilov has either been off in avoidance or clipped the car of Maddie Shepard. So Van der Geest, in the unlikely Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale, is third. And about to put a lap on Christian Dauger too. Let's hope this goes cleanly. It nearly didn't when Julian Paus came to lap him. And Dauger went bouncing off the barriers. John van der Geest looks to be using the slipstream, not that there's much slipstream to be gained in these brick-like cars with no artificial downforce. Van der Geest does go through, and that was good heads-up driving from Dauger to see him coming and give him way. Through that fast Master Kink-like chicane, Van der Geest continuing on in that third position. Let's take a look at Tony Talviti, also in the Alfa Romeo, just to remind us that he's still in the race. We haven't seen him in so long because we haven't needed to. He's been consistently lapping in the 239s. And the Finnish driver, the Flying Finn, starts his 19th lap of the race. Through the right-hander. He might end up regretting giving up his points from Ram, and giving up points as well as Paul Upham, who appears, well, he was right with Christian Dauger. I don't know if there's been contact between the two of them or if Upham's just had an incident by himself, but he's had a spin of some variety. Wide goes Dauger. And the carnage continues here at Bannochbrae with just over 10 minutes remaining. Of course, it's probably more like 11 or 12 because when the timer runs out, the race doesn't end instantly. They at least get to complete the lap that they're on. Oh, big slide! And Upham again goes into the wall. He's struggling now. Godin's going to get him, I think. Well, that's Dauger alongside him, but here comes Stefan Legodin in the Cobra. All over the back now of Paul Upham, who's made way too many mistakes in this last lap to hold him off. And through. He's up the inside, but Upham fends him off. Very sideways goes Legodin. Great suspension on the hardtop though. Allows you to carry slides like that, and sometimes it's the ideal way through the corner. Like there, where you see the car with a little bit more yaw angle than anything else. Just because that is how that car works. Slow, say the signs on the track. I'm not sure these drivers are going to be paying much attention to that. Under the bridge. And that's a speed limit sign on the road as well. Once again. Away with your speed limits. Under 10 minutes to go in this race, and Upham's very sideways again. Holds it. Good to see. That Ferrari is a real beast to control. Every time we've seen Kirillov have to avoid an accident, he's got involved in it. And Upham himself has unfortunately caused a few of them by sliding the tail out and just not quite being able to hold it. It almost looks like a bit of a prototype to drive, to be honest, where you have all the grip in the world until you have none at all, and the car just swaps ends on you. But at least it's pretty. Over the hill they go. Here comes the jump. Yes, all four wheels in the air, just like we like seeing. The front wheels especially. Pario Deus X says, John's not the fastest, but he's always the most consistent and knows how to stay out of trouble in order to capitalise on others' misfortune. Looks like it might earn him a podium. Yeah, you see, the crazy thing is he has had incidents. Pretty much everyone back from Talviti has. It's just that he's had fewer than other people. But I'm sure we've seen Van der Geest bouncing off the wall a couple of times, at least once, anyway. Kirillov could still catch him. Still seems to have the pace. But you're absolutely right about Van der Geest being consistent. It's the same in the R-Factor 2 series where I compete against him as well. Matheus Estrella 238.9. I think I've only seen 2 or 3 people get into the 238s in this race. Estrella being one of them. And this race really is a case of the driver with the fewest mistakes, the driver with the least damage, will take the victory. Of course, that's often the case in cars and circuits as difficult as this, but with 15 cars remaining, it does rather give the impression of a bit of a slugfest where they're all bravely carrying on as much as they can, as far as they can, just in case there are other retirements, just in case they can snag points. Left-hander now. Ball up and getting away once again from Stefan Lagodin. But we've seen him do that before and then make mistakes, so can he keep it clean for the rest of the race? I'll probably take a look at Kirilov now, because he's within 1.5 seconds of Van der Geest. Looked to be about a second behind through one of those mini sectors, but obviously the mini splits don't take into account things like braking zones. You can never quite tell. Julian Paus, another driver in the 238s, that wasn't even his best lap, so he's definitely been quicker and been one of the quickest drivers. 20 laps completed in this race. Around a track this long, that's quite impressive. I knew we'd get to about the 20 lap margin, and providing there are no incidents or whatever, we could get to about lap 24. Depending on where Talviti is on the track right now. I haven't been paying attention, to be honest. Kirilov. I don't think he's caused any incidents. I haven't seen him go off or spin on his own, but he's got involved in a couple. He got involved when Upham spun in front of him, and he got involved, I think, when Shepard spun in front of him a few laps ago. Shepard, another driver who will be absolutely kicking herself today. But we do have plenty more opportunities to do better in this championship. Like I said, it is a 6-round season. Let me look up the schedule, actually. That will be an interesting thing to look at. Some tracks real, some tracks fictional, such as this Bannochbrae circuit. They're now approaching the only Jaguar in the race, Kai Sivertsen. Past him they go. Sivertsen stays out the way. Very nice. So we've been to Reims in France. We are currently at Bannochbrae in Scotland. Next up is going to be Bremgarten in Switzerland, which is one of the original Formula 1 circuits. Held the Swiss Grand Prix back in the 1950s until motor racing was banned outright in Switzerland after the Le Mans disaster in 1955. Then for round 4 we go back to France with Clermont-Ferrand, and that is another relatively twisty one, so expect the likes of Tony Talviti and John Van der Geest to go well there. Then round 5 we go to the Felbergring, which I think we have been to in a previous classic racing series, but I can't remember much about it. I cannot even remember if it's real. And then for round 6 we go to what is known as the Kleine Nordschleife. Now that's just how it's registered. It's yet to be seen whether that's just a small version of the Nürburgring Nordschleife or whether that is a layout of the Nordschleife. And Kirilov now has a run on John Van der Geest. Takes a look to the outside, but that's going to be too big an ask through that corner to go all the way around the outside of the very nimble Alfa Romeo. No Aston Martins in the field, but he does have the slingshot down the straight. Once again takes a look to the outside. Van der Geest covers him off. He'll be on the straights if he's able to do it. Ooh, much better exit, but he gets balked. John Van der Geest, right where Kirilov would have wanted to put his car. So, the very distinctive yellow Ferrari that you can see from a mile off Van der Geest would have been watching him in his mirrors, and Paul Upham is out of the race. We've lost the Ferrari driver who was running in 6th position. That puts Stefan Legodin up into 6th place, and that is a big shame for Paul Upham, but we've seen him have a few collisions. It's entirely possible that that was just a little bit too much, or he may have had a disconnection. We simply cannot... And he's back! Well, please forgive me. Oh! Well, he's definitely having internet issues. He's having some kind of a disconnection or something along those lines. I think we'll check back in with him in due time, but it looks to me as if he's either retired with internet issues or if he's struggling onward. Still showing us in 6th position for the time being, so don't panic, but that's definitely worrying for Paul Upham. And I know it's not my side this time, because when it was on my side, the entire grid showed up as being out of the race. And then, of course, reappeared. This time, it appears to just be one person. We're not far from the last lap of the race. I think we'll probably get 22 or 23 laps in at this point. Pario Deus X says, looks like these cars are more reliable when driven hard compared to the RFAX version of these cars we ran last year. Not one engine expired yet. That does tend to be the case with the Assetto Corsa. As I said earlier, they're a little bit tanky here. Kirilov, once again, is clearly quicker than John Van der Geest through this sector, but how do you pass a car as nimble as John Van der Geest this late on in the race, where he's desperate to keep his position? I think they're about to go on to what will be the last lap of the race, because Tony Talviti just started his 22nd lap, and I don't believe he will have time to start his 23rd. Yep, looking at the screen, this is the last lap, and through goes Kirilov. Kirilov has made the move on the straight, and as they go onto the very last lap, he takes the podium position away from John Van der Geest and puts it into the hands of the bright yellow Ferrari. And as we see the checkered flag being prepared now, let's ride on board with Tony Talviti as he once again shows us around this circuit. He's driven so beautifully today. Has not put a wheel wrong, and so long as that continues for the next half a lap, he will take the victory here, and technically his first points of the season. He forfeited the points that he gained from the first race in the Porsche 911 R Grouper, of which there are none left in this championship, and switched to the Alfa Romeo 33, which presumably he felt would give him a better chance for the rest of the year. And whether or not that will pay off in the championship, it appears to have paid off today. Into the final sector goes Tony Talviti, beautifully controlled there. Handful of opposite lock, but that's okay. That was all in the plan. Down to the chicane he goes. Over the crest of the hill. This is where the cars get light and jump. Through a double right-hander over the bridge. And another double right-hander that is effectively the final corner of the race. Down to the line comes Tony Talviti. You'll see the flag being prepared. And what a drive it has been for the Flying Finn, who wins here in Bannochbrae. Now let's take a look back at Julian Paus. As we saw earlier, the most popular driver in the field in the fantastic Bizzarini, and he will be second. Great drive from Julian Paus despite the incident we saw earlier on. And Kirill Kirilov took 3rd position on the last lap, and it looks as if he will hold off John Van der Geest to finish in that place, albeit 42 seconds behind the overall race leader. That was how good Tony Talviti was today. Absolutely flawless. Kirill Kirilov across the line takes 3rd. John Van der Geest is 4th. And I don't believe that anyone's going to take fastest lap away from Talviti, meaning that this was a Grand Chelem, and he will get the maximum number of points, just as Maddie Shepherd, who we're watching here, did 2 weeks ago at Rennes. And Maddie will be disappointed with this, although I think should maintain the championship lead. Paul Upham is 6th. I said a few laps ago that he'd retired, but obviously that was just a glitch, and he has continued on to 6th position. 7th will be Stefan Lagodin, just ahead of Laurent Lons in 8th. Phil Brown, who fought with Lagodin and Lons for so long, has dropped back to 9th position, and he finishes there ahead of Mateus Estrella, who could have done way better today. 11th will be Michal Mazurek, 12th was Kimi Martikainen, 13th Kai Sivertsen, 14th Philip Pickler, and 15th Christian Dauger. And then the only official retirement of this race was Mariusz Lebioda. If you do want to get involved in this racing series, then please go to the Sim Racing Online site. That should be, as I get that up, simracingonline.co.uk. And if you go to the AC Legends GTC60s Championship, then you can sign up and get involved from round 3 onwards, and I suggest that you do, because this racing looks like a heck of a lot of fun. Congratulations to Tony Talviti. Thank you all very much for watching. I'd again like to say thank you to everyone who helped me to set this stream up, because this was not easy, and in fact has probably been one of my hardest streams to set up out of all of the streams that I've done on Assetto Corsa, but I do appreciate it. And I'm very much looking forward to the next race, which will be in 2 weeks' time at Bremgarten, the basically Swiss Grand Prix, Swiss round of the championship. That should be a heck of a lot of fun. Thank you all. Thank you to Perry Deus Ex, who who compliments my commentary. Very, very nice. I am glad that you enjoyed watching it. Giving Rob a run for his money. I'll have to tell him you said that. No, I'm joking, it's fine. But yeah, I do appreciate it, and if you want to watch more, then we will be back in 2 weeks' time at the same time. That's 8 o'clock UK time. You can convert that to whatever your local time is, and I will see you then. Once again, thank you all, and take care. Bye bye.